Hello and welcome. You're watching BW CFO World's BW Dialogue, where we talk to some of the sharpest financial minds leading the biggest corporate institutions and try to understand their journey. How had they fared during the pandemic? What new processes and practices have they implemented? And now, as we focus from recovery to rise, what are some of their top priorities and how are they looking forward towards the future? In this special episode, we're talking to Mr. Samir Seksaria, who is the CFO of Tata Consultancy Services. At this point, I want to warmly welcome him. Very warm welcome to you, Mr. Seksaria. How are you doing?
Thank you, Janni. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on your program.
Now, I want to jump right into the first question, sir. Recently, you had posted online about completing 100 days as CFO. For our viewers who are watching, Mr. Seksaria has been a part of TCS's financial transformation for over 2 decades. And he took the baton from his predecessor in May 2021, right after a grueling second wave. So as India recovered from that and you took the baton forward, I want to understand what were the things that you implemented and if you would like to change something or what are your focus as we move forward, as we talk from recovery to rise. What are your next priorities?
I was very privileged to have a team which is, which has the depth of experience and the depth of knowledge and we have been together as a team for a substantially long period of time. So that was a big advantage for me. And when I took over during the pandemic, I would say one big learning or a few big learnings from the pandemic was, one is the first one I would call out is the shift of focus on outcomes. Whereas previously, a lot of focus was on activities performed or the effort input on that rather than outcomes.
Right.
Second is to invest ahead of the curve. And last, I would say an important learning is to look beyond ROIs and focus on value drivers. I'll give you an anecdote on that. So somewhere in 2018, we were looking at the workplace collaboration tools from some of the key providers in the market. And at that time, a lot of discussion was happening that we already have an email, so disparate systems, but we have email in place, we have an instant messaging in place, we have video conferencing in place, we have our homegrown file sharing application in place.
Right.
So why go for a workplace collaboration tool which would just integrate all of it and put it together, right? And that was a decision on does it justify the investment required? And what helped us, and we eventually made that decision. And looking back, I would say that was a very wise decision. What helped us was the focus on value delivered by an integrated solution, which helped us, which ensured that it drives employee efficiency. And that's something that helped our smooth migration when the pandemic started.
Right.
So those are some of my learnings.
So talking about digital tools, now that you brought it up, I think IT has been the bellwether of the pandemic season. All companies are looking at being digital first and future ready. So, and TCS too has been a big part of this journey. We're talking about IoT and 5G with great vigor now. So what is the biggest piece of investment pie that you are focusing on going forward financially? What is the investment focus as we go from recovery to rise?
So in general, TCS is very technology agnostic. So we will invest across streams of existing as well as upcoming technology streams. And the approach we follow from an investment strategy perspective, specifically on technology stacks, is a portfolio approach. So as certain technologies would gain momentum, we would increase our respective investments on those technologies which are gaining momentum. And our investments are primarily in terms of competency building through training and reskilling employees, and in areas of research and innovation, as well as building intellectual property. Mm-hmm. So I'll talk about the TCS NPSD framework, which is the new products and services development framework, where any new product or offering would go through various stages of validation, right from an incubation stage till a commercial go live stage. And that's how the framework of investment and committing incremental resources to the investments is put to a formal framework process.
Right.
And also, I would so if we talk about offerings like cloud and security, they are now practically mainstream. So our early investments on that gives us an opportunity to now harvest on these opportunities. Whereas if you take offerings like 5G or even blockchain, they are now slowly gaining momentum, and we continue to invest around all these offerings.
Right. Okay. So talking about things that you've invested early on, and one of the things that are the strengths of TCS, human capital, of course, is one of the biggest strengths, one of the biggest employers in the country. So I want to talk a little bit about the financial impact of the manpower strategy, so to speak. Now, we've heard in the news that TCS has given 2 wage hikes. Now we're looking to bring back employees from December. And also, we're in the midst of one of the biggest financial female talent drive. So all this in perspective, what is the impact of the manpower strategy that you're looking at?
Sure. So let me start by saying that none of the initiatives that you mentioned has an incremental financial impact since they are part of our business model itself. Right. So whether it is wage hikes that are already reflected in our Q1 or our hiring drives that are part of our diversity and inclusion initiatives, or the back to office initiative, since we didn't give up any office premises, it fits in well with our vision towards our vision 25 by 25.
Okay.
And so our focus from a manpower strategy perspective has been on attracting, engaging, and retaining talent. Okay. And that is where our investments are also directed towards. So primarily around attracting talent in respective markets where we operate in, and in terms of engaging talent, it is towards digitally upskilling employees. This is a contradictory approach to what some others might follow, which is replacing people every time there is a change in technology. So I'd quote our chairman who once mentioned, there are no legacy people, it is only legacy technologies. And that is a philosophy we deeply ingrained.
I think that is a very interesting takeaway. No legacy people, legacy technologies. But I think there is a certain legacy to people in terms of the practices they put in place. And here I want to jump into your journey with TCS over 2 decades. You have your predecessors, Mr. Mahalingam, Mr. Rajesh Gopinathan, or Ramakrishna Venkataraman. You have worked with them. There are a lot of learnings that you mentioned you have gotten from them. So taking from that journey, what would you say are the pillars of a strong financial strategy and sustainable financial growth in especially dynamic times that we're seeing?
Sure. So while if you ask me as a CFO, I would say that the key constituents of a strong financial strategy are around business planning, good governance, and value creation by ensuring stakeholder returns. But if I take inspiration from my learnings, I believe the mantra to a successful finance function lies in the following 4 pillars. First is leadership, where finance partners with business, working across functions and acts as an influencer. Second is around operational excellence, where finance possesses a strong understanding of the company's business model and the industry in which the company operates in, and is able to use this knowledge to provide an independent perspective and ensuring that business decisions are grounded on solid financial basis.
Right.
The third one is around controls, which is in terms of identifying, quantifying, and mitigating risk. And last is on long-term financial planning or long-term planning. This is around supporting strategy development and helping enable the execution of the strategy itself. Since you mentioned about the finance transformation journey, I'd like to take a minute around it. And that's a topic which is very close to my heart, and I can go on for hours and hours. But I'll quickly summarize some of my our key initiatives which we have done over the last 1 decade. And those are initiatives that involved using technology to enable finance or transformation in finance. The first one is on day one reporting, where we ensure that the financials are available across all business units. We have about 5 cluster units about 40 main business units and 150 sub-business units. Across all these business units, at the start of business hours on day one, immediately after the period closure, the financials would be available with the respective business leaders. Second is around straight-through processing, where we leverage analytics-based risk management to replace physical verification and ensure that 70% of the transaction, let's say in the domain of employee reimbursement, so claims get processed straight through and get paid on the very next day. While the first one on day one processing releases a lot of management bandwidth, where no one's waiting for numbers and they get the results spot on. The second one increases a lot of employee satisfaction because they get paid as soon as they raise a claim. And the third one, or the last one, is around digital governance, where we had adopted about 5 to 6 years back paperless board meetings and AGMs.
Right. I think that must have come very handy considering how everything went to, e-audits and e-board meetings. So now, I want to stay on this page and I want to understand what would you say are some of the skills that emerging CFOs should focus on? If you were to say the CFO CV has updated post-pandemic, what do you think has become more important nowadays? What skills should the upcoming CFOs who are watching this update themselves on?
Mm-hmm. So I would say over the past decade, the role of a CFO has undergone a profound shift. The historical tasks of finance functions such as financial reporting or classic finance activities around payroll, procurement, invoicing, and statutory compliance continue to be important, but are taken as a hygiene factor. Today's modern CFO has to play the role of an effective business partner. Towards this, the CFO must assist the CEO in long-term strategy. It should he or she should assist the business heads in better operational decision-making, leveraging analytics, and at times take the lead in driving initiatives that lead to organization-wide change and transformation. I would go to the extent saying that traditionally CFOs were stereotyped as bean counters or number crunchers who operated behind the scenes. While today's CFO are expected to drive the direction and success of the organization they work in, focusing on strategic business imperatives, partnering with business, and driving change in a dynamic business environment.
Right. I think I'm tapering towards the end of my questions. A lot of nuggets from that. In fact, we were talking about how now CFOs, we should change that a little bit and say they're the chief future officers, because it's more than just, being a financial steward. It's about being a crisis manager, being a risk analyzer, and so much more, along with the original hygiene factors, as you mentioned. So tapering towards some of the forward-looking things, I think moving to a general CFO trend, we're talking about ESG in a very big way now. We're talking about how companies are to take the first step in corporate consciousness and building this forward. And while some CFOs say, this is a very nascent stage in India, we need to be a little more serious about it. What do you say? What is your view? Are we taking it serious enough? And how can India as a country, we're at this, at a position where we can lead the corporate consciousness. We're a very young country. So how do you think we can take this forward, and are we taking ESG seriously in India?
Okay. Bear with me for a longish answer. I would say personally, I believe ESG is on the agenda of a lot of CXOs, and definitely the awareness and the need for action is well accepted across corporates. From an environmental perspective, it's a start where companies in India specifically, globally it's a big trend. But from an environmental perspective, companies have started setting aspirational targets. And there are companies who have been taking concrete action towards reducing their carbon footprint, energy consumption. And there are metrics which companies themselves have been driving.
Right.
Or even independently, or there are metrics which are independently reported by analysts as well as by a few ESG-centric firms. So what we'll have to do is look at how this matrix either could be standardized, and probably these matrix would be different from an industry to industry. So there would have to be some common hold on getting an industry specific matrix. Then if we take likewise on the societal spend, there's an increased corporate participation. We have examples of Tata Group that have always been very much involved in these areas for many, many decades through their philanthropic trust. But now that CSR has been mandated spend basis the company law, we do see increased participation from many large companies. And similarly is the story on corporate governance. It's high on board agendas globally. And we see the same increased participation in India as well.
Right.
If you permit me, I would like to share what we have been doing on the ESG front in TCS.
Sure.
So in the environmental front, we have been leveraging technology using smart sensors deployed across all our delivery centers. And we deployed this somewhere in 2015. So what the smart sensors do is that enables remote monitoring and centralized controls for an efficient energy management. And what we have been able to achieve is in the last 6 to 7 years, even pre-pandemic, we have been, so though our volumes in terms of headcount and overall seating capacity has increased multifold in the last 6 to 7 years, our energy cost has remained flat for 5 years up to FY20. And then in FY21, due to pandemic, offices remaining closed, it was a negative. But we were able to maintain it flat for 5 years. And that's an offering which we have now taken it for our customers. We call it Clever Energy. And so the same smart sensors can be used in our customer locations to optimize energy. We have also set an aspiration to be net zero by 2030. Right. If we look at from a CSR perspective, we have been contributing towards community initiatives around education, entrepreneurship, as well as in the areas of basic health and wellness, amongst others. And we have many programs going on under each of these specific initiatives. Right. Lastly, you mentioned about sustainability reporting. So TCS has been publishing its sustainability report based on the GRI standards since 15 years, since 2006. And for the past 2 years, we have adapted to integrated reporting. So for FY20, we received an award from the Institute of Chartered Accountants for the best presented integrated report as well.
Right. I think a lot of lessons that emerging companies can look upon and learn from TCS. I think this has been a very interesting conversation. Thank you for your time. I've tapered to the end of my questions, and I hope our viewers too got a lot of nuggets of wisdom that you have imparted. So thank you for your time, and thank you for making this happen.
Thanks a lot, Janani.